Let's get right into it as Joshua Miller has sent in a $20 super chat that I think is fair and I think represents a lot of our viewers and this fan base in general. Josh wrote, "We paid Deshaun Watson to be a game changer, not a game manager. There's a half dozen QBs we could have brought in for that role for half the price. It's embarrassing to watch Baker, Dalton, Darnold, and a rookie outplay our $230 million man." Josh, I understand what you're saying. Like, when you give that type of contract out, it is clearly going to a player you feel is not necessarily just like worth the money, but someone who is going to elevate those around you because you don't have as much cap space to go to linemen, running backs, receivers. But because the quarterback is so good, you give him B- wide receivers, and he can make them into B+, A- wide receivers, right? That's kind of just the surface level thinking, and I get that. I believe if Baker, Dalton, Darnold, and or a rookie were behind this offensive line and working with the drops the receivers have given Deshaun Watson, they would not be doing nearly as well as they are right now. So, has Deshaun Watson been as good as advertised? No. He has not lived up to the Houston Texans' expectations and that version of himself. Would any other quarterback be doing much better with this offense right now? I could probably list a few, like Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen. Lamar, without a good offensive line in front of him, I'm not quite sure how well he would run. I mean, I'm sure there's one or two I'm forgetting right now, but like the point I'm trying to make here is I don't think those guys would be any better. And I do believe that Watson can be a great quarterback on this team, but if Amari Cooper doesn't catch the football, and if DeJuan Jones just lets guys into the backfield, whether you pay a quarterback $230 million or $23, like neither one's going to have success. So I think at some point we, as a fan base and just as a football community, need to, I would say stop, but need to like maybe separate a little bit of just because you're given this much money doesn't mean all of a sudden you can make your receivers catch the football, right? Like make your linemen block defensive ends. Doesn't matter how much money he makes. And there are a lot of quarterbacks who are highly paid right now that aren't playing super well. And I don't often see them getting pointed at with their contract. I think this is just frustration and a long time coming with year 3 and Watson not living up to the payday and the trade assets given up, and it's all crashing down right now. So, Josh, no, I don't think you're wrong for this line of thinking completely, but I do think it's important to recognize, while it's not like Baker, Dalton, and Darnold all have 5 all-pro offensive linemen. I'm sure they've got their issues to work with as well. Right now, Watson is dealing with some really tough issues. He has a lot of pressure, and he has receivers dropping passes. So is Deshaun Watson the number one problem on the offense? We have over 100 people tuned in. We have a lot of ground to cover on today's live show. Nick Chubb coming back to practice this week. Amari Cooper trade rumors. So we're going to get to it all, I promise. But first, give me your opinion while we let the audience build up a little bit. Is Watson the number one problem? If the Browns took out Deshaun Watson and put in Jameis Winston, would they score more points? Just let's simplify it down to that. If Jameis Winston played on Sunday against the Raiders, would the Browns have more than 10 points on offense? Give me a yes or give me a no down in the comment section. I don't think so. I don't. And I think that this has been something that people have been coming towards my side of the aisle for a little bit now, because week 1, plenty of blame to go on Watson, but there were signs of bad O-line and poor wide receiver play. Now it's on full display. Before we get any further in today's live show, it was made possible thanks to our friends over at Game Time. Game Time has a new feature called Game Time Picks that makes getting tickets to see your favorite teams play live even easier. Maybe you want to catch some postseason baseball with the Guardians or any other local sporting event. Use Game Time today because they are giving the Dog Pound $20 off their first purchase. Terms apply, but again, create an account and redeem code CHAT Sports for $20 off. Game Time has so many cool features to it. I really like how you can get a bird's eye view of your seat. That way you know exactly what you're getting before you spend your hard-earned money. Download Game Time today. I put all that information in the comments and description of today's video. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game time. All right, it is time to shout out your city because there is a lot of frustration and just a lot of sadness, I would say, right now for a 1-3 ball club. But I was telling producer Smitty, who sits directly in front of me here at work, that when he asked, like, how are Browns fans? I'm like, well, 1-2 felt like you were about to fall off a cliff. When you turn to 1-3, you somehow convince yourself that, like, okay, this is the end of the line. If they drop one more game before winning 2 more games, it's probably all going to come crashing down. So I will officially draw the line in the sand. If the Browns fall to 1-4, they're toast. So huge game coming up on Sunday in the nation's capital against the Commanders, who have won 3 in a row after losing week 1 down in Tampa Bay. So big game coming up. Shout out your city. We're going to talk a little bit about the Raiders game, and then we're going to reset, and we're going to move forward. Like, Monday is for reflecting on Sunday. Tuesday is kind of in between where you get your final last thoughts on Monday and start peeking ahead till Sunday. And then Wednesday, we're full on ready for the Commanders. So shout out your city for me. We're going to get to the Nick Chubb news. We're going to get to the Amari Cooper trade rumors. Adam Schefter was talking about it. Let me know in the comment section. Tyrone. Jerry Jeudy is the wide receiver 1. I've never heard of that city. I wonder where Jerry Jeudy is wide receiver 1. Sounds like maybe something in Alabama. We got small town California here. I've got Maryland.
Like City.
Yeah. Kimberly Hurst is in Lincoln, Nebraska. Kathy's in Sacramento. Ohio in the chat. Bermuda Triangle. Sacramento. Jacob is in Northwest Ohio. It's in Mexico. That's right. It did sound a little Spanish after all. F the Ravens. That works too, Brian. Long Beach, California. Bills in Orlando. Toledo. Canton right now. Canton, Michigan from Tommy. Seattle. Oklahoma City. Jay is in Cleveland, Anaheim, Alfred's in New York, and we have Motley watching from Columbus, Ohio. So shout out your city for me in the chat real quick. It's fun to get everyone watching involved. Try to have some fun on today's live show because it hasn't been a very first fun month of football. We're through the first quarter of the season, right? 17 games, 4 games in, pretty much. We have probably just like taken the second snap of quarter number 2 in our rough, like, what's the word I'm looking for, comparison to the NFL schedule length. But shout out your city for me in the chat. We're also going to have a mailbag later on in today's live show. So if you have any questions at all, whether it's about play calling, Watson, or moves that could/should be made, anything under the sun, use hashtag Browns or super chat like Joshua Miller did. Josh, I don't know if I said it already, but I do appreciate your super chat and your support as always. And super chat, we guarantee your question gets on screen. So Josh's super chat will be included in our mailbag. Hashtag Browns in the chat. If you are unable to super chat, not a problem at all. Hashtag Browns, and producer Reed will pick his favorite questions from the chat. So we got that coming up. A lot of ground to cover. 186 people watching, just 26 likes, though. Can we do a little bit better than that? I don't want to be needy, but it does go a long way when you like the video. It just tells the YouTube algorithm, hey, this is a popular Browns channel. Let's show this channel to more Browns fans. And while that doesn't do a whole lot for you, it does a whole lot for me. So if you enjoy the free content, that's the very least I ask is you like the video. So hit that thumbs up button. Let's get ourselves to 50 likes before we jump into the latest on Nick Chubb, Amari Cooper, and just overall thoughts from Sunday, losing to a Halloween team. We lost to Party City. But yeah, it's just coming crashing down on me. Every single time they did crowd shots, it was either a ton of Browns fans or it looked like a Party City magazine. It looked like Party City and a Disney Channel movie from 2003 had a love child with someone cheating on one of those two spouses, and that someone being a horror film. That's basically what every Raiders fan looked like in the crowd. Okay, so 52 likes. We are ready to jump into it. Time Lord's getting a question in. Kathy's got a question in. Robert, I see your question, but you have to put the hashtag next to the word Browns. You can't put a space bar, so just copy it, paste it back in, but delete that space because our software is just scanning for hashtag Browns in the chat. All right, let's dive into a live Cleveland Browns report. Welcome on into the Cleveland Browns Report by Chat Sports. We have a lot to discuss on today's episode. We have Nick Chubb coming off the PUP list potentially, practicing this week. We'll tell you everything you need to know about that. Some Amari Cooper trade rumors. So a lot of ground to cover on today's episode. But rapid fire, I just want to run through my final thoughts from week 4 after rewatching the game, kind of letting everything settle in, decompress. First takeaway I've got is Deshaun Watson is not Superman, and the Browns need him to be Superman. And a lot of the fan base, and I can understand why, believes he should be Superman because when you give a guy $230 million, almost $250 million, and you give up 3 first-round draft picks, the expectation is you are Superman. I think we can all somewhat come to a middle ground on Deshaun Watson's not as bad as people kind of made him out to be early on. Plus, I've long stated on this channel, Watson gets off to slow starts in his career. This is not a new thing this year. Historically, he gets off to slow starts. So I'm not surprised that he did not have a great outing against the Dallas Cowboys. But he has gotten better every single week. And to me, it is clear Watson is not bad. He's not terrific. Like, he's not elite. He doesn't look like an MVP candidate. He is not overcoming the issues in front of him. But in his defense, he can't force the receivers to catch the football. He can't force DeJuan Jones to block his guy. Like, there are issues that are simply out of Watson's control. And sure, it would be nice if he, with that big paycheck he gets, overcomes those issues. But it's clear to me at this point, Watson is somewhat rounding into form of he's a good quarterback. If he could get a little bit of help, he'd be a lot better, but he needs that help. And that's not really what we all signed up for, given the assets going out the door to get him and the contract to get him, but that's where we are right now. I don't think this team is better without him. I don't think he's going anywhere as long as he's healthy. I don't think the Browns are trying to move on from Watson. I think the Browns recognize we've got a good quarterback. Sure, he may not be as good as we thought or hoped to overcome those issues, but I like just one play, but what more can he do when he throws the ball right to Amari Cooper's chest? Like, that was a perfect pass. And that, I feel like, sums up a lot of the issues the Browns offense have had this year. Second final thought coming out of this loss. Amari Cooper, I think, might just be broken. And I know there's been a lot of chatter that, hey, maybe the Brandon Ayuk trade rumors involving Cooper kind of got into his head a little bit. I struggle to really believe that. I don't think Cooper mid-route is thinking, can't believe they fucking tried to trade me for Ayuk. No way. Like, I refuse to believe as he's going up to catch it. It's like Brandon Ayuk's face is on the football. No. Now, that doesn't excuse that he's gotten off to a horrible start, and I cannot fathom it. I really can make zero sense of it. I mean, I'll be the first one to tell you I was wrong if this goes even more downhill. I thought Cooper would play even better than he did the last 2 years in Cleveland. But it's not trending that direction. Hopefully this is a bad take and this ages poorly. But yeah, we're a quarter of the way into the season, and I've got 3 bad games from Cooper and 1 good game. Which one's the outlier? Third and final thought. The offensive line, you ready for this? A little bit better. And that's mostly because the bar was so low, it's hard not to improve. But I do think, and just bear with me for a moment, and then we're going to get to the Nick Chubb and Amari Cooper stuff, might have actually been better in week 4 than previous weeks. If we just want to go off the numbers, look at the improvement. I mean, 25 pressures week 1 against the Cowboys, down to 3. So some level of corrections have been made. I don't think it's good enough. I think, unfortunately, a lot of the offensive line miscues come at really poor times, like when Watson was about to unload a deep pass to Amari Cooper, but DeJuan Jones lets his guy by, and the pass isn't quite on target. Or when Nick Harris just snaps it erroneously, and the Browns go from 1st and 10 inside the red zone to 2nd and 16. Or when Nick Harris, although still a BS call, gets a holding call as the Browns put the go-ahead touchdown on the board. Like, they came at very inconvenient times in Week 4, but they were less frequent than the previous 3 weeks. So, progress. But will the Browns make the playoffs? We're going to talk all about Nick Chubb and his status, along with Cooper and some trade rumors out there from Adam Schefter. But the pinned comment for today's episode: will Cleveland make the playoffs at 1-3? Shoot your shot down below while this YouTube ad rolls. So some updates to get to. Nick Chubb. Kevin Stefanski, speaking to the media on Monday over Zoom, said they expect Nick Chubb to practice on Wednesday. What does this mean? The Browns are opening Nick Chubb's practice window, so he will have 21 days to come off the PUP list. If the Browns do not activate him to the 53-man roster, then he is going to spend the rest of the season on the PUP list. So, he is not off just yet. We're not completely out of the woods, but I do not believe the Browns would open up his 21-day practice window if they were not confident that he could be able to return to the roster in said 21-day window. A lot of times you see guys come off the PUP list in the middle of the year, similar to cases like Chubb, and it does not mean they are ready to roll for the very first game up ahead on the schedule. I would be a little surprised if Chubb plays as early as this Sunday against the Commanders, but I think they want to give Chubb 2 weeks of practice. It could be all 3 weeks of available practice going into Week 5, Week 6, Week 7, and then Week 8, they kind of max out their free practice days to make sure he's 100%, he's NFL game speed ready, and then they toss him out there. So I think we shouldn't assume that Chubb's going to be available and playing as early as this Sunday. I'm eyeing the Eagles game 2 weeks from now. But if Nick Chubb saves the season, build the statue that day. If we see Chubb come back and somehow resurrect this team, get the offense out of this funk, and it leads to an offensive explosion because the Browns finally have a ground game that can be respected. Oh boy. Those 24 jerseys are going to fly off the shelves. Which, by the way, after the Browns lose to the Raiders 20-16, blowing a 10-0 lead, blowing an early lead for a second straight week, they've actually had leads in all 3 losses. Yeah, they led against the Cowboys, did they not? They scored a field goal, and then the Giants, and now this game. So not very good at playing with the lead here. But leave it to the Browns, by the way, for great PR work to go, I know you guys are all pissed off that we're 1-3 and we just lost to the Raiders, but Nick Chubb's practicing on Wednesday. Like, make us all look over here when the real story is over there. So, yes, Chubb expected to practice on Wednesday. That is the belief. That is the expectation. Does not mean he is going to play on Sunday. He's still not really on the roster. He's kind of in no man's land here. He's allowed to practice. Doesn't count towards a roster spot, but if he does not get elevated to the roster after 21 days, he is out for the rest of the year on the reserve PUP list. We're going to talk about Amari Cooper next up on the show, but a quick shout out to our sponsor today, Game Time. Game Time has a new feature called Game Time Picks that makes getting tickets to see your favorite teams play live even easier. Game Time Picks filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. One thing I enjoy about Game Time is their all-in pricing option. When you toggle this, it shows you the total upfront cost with no surprise fees at checkout. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code CHATSPORTS for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply, but again, create an account and redeem code CHAT Sports for $20 off. I put all that information in the comments and description of today's video. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game time. We need to have a tough conversation. It is that time. We're 4 weeks into the season. I thought week 3 was a tremendous outing from Cooper. 2 touchdowns, handful of grabs, a lot of yards. Okay, the first 2-week funk is behind him. And then he showed us he saved the worst for week 4 with an interception that, probably cost him the game. Like, the Raiders take this. If Cooper holds on to this football, the Browns have 1st and 10 around the Raiders' 35-ish. And the Raiders turned around from this pick and punched it in for 6. Did they not? We're talking about like a 10-point swing here. And the Browns not even escape with a victory, but probably win with a decent cushion too. But that drop, I know it's one bad play, and I'm probably making a little bit too big of a deal out of one play, but it's not just one play, right? There was the drop against the Cowboys. There's a drop against the Jags. Like, there's a lot of bad plays here. And they're not just like 50-50 balls. They are, fundamental, as routine as it gets. So, when it comes to talking about trading Amari Cooper, while he has not been great, like I just kind of went on a little rant about, I'm not at the stage of trading him just yet. And I don't think the Browns are there either, because if they were to trade Amari Cooper, to me, that signals they are raising the French flag and surrendering. Sorry to all of our French viewers. For me, I feel like Andrew Berry at 1-3 is not going to throw in the towel on this year just yet. And it's not like they have a bunch of young wide receivers that are waiting to break out and develop, right? They don't have some second-round pick who's kind of buried on their bench, who's only getting 10 snaps a game because Cooper, Judy, and Moore are all ahead of him. It's not quite like the DPJ, Cedric Tillman scenario we saw last year, because you're talking about moving on from your wide receiver 1, not your wide receiver 3. But Adam Schefter, he was on the Pat McAfee show, and he mentioned how the Chiefs, who, if you didn't see, lost Rashee Rice, or believe they lost Rashee Rice, depending on when you're watching this, it may or may not be confirmed, to a torn ACL. Hollywood Brown is already out for the season before it even began. So you're basically down, from Kansas City's standpoint, your top 2 receivers going into the season. The Chiefs have made wide receiver acquisitions the last 2 years at the NFL trade deadline. Last year, they brought back the speedy return man from the Jets who caught the touchdown in overtime, and I'm blanking on his name, and you're all yelling it at me right now. But Mecole Hardman. But the Chiefs could be looking at the situation right here and thinking, we really need a wide receiver. Like I just said, though, I don't think the Browns are at the stage of accepting defeat on the season. And trading Amari Cooper, I think, would be a sign of we're going to kind of pack it up a little bit, or we're at least going to start looking to the future, because there's no way the Browns feel like they are going to go to New Orleans this year without Amari Cooper and voluntarily move on from him. I don't expect to see any movement for 3 weeks, right? The NFL trade deadline is November 5th. So we have 5 weeks until then. We have a lot of ground to get to cover. I think the Browns are going to give it the next 3 weeks to see if they can put together a postseason push. If they were to lose on Sunday against the Commanders, we're talking about a 1-4 team that I still think Andrew Berry would not quit on, because trading Cooper is not just, moving on from a player, but you're also sending a big message to the locker room of, yeah, we're going to be sellers. We're not going to stand pat and try and keep it together and figure it out. So if after the next 3 weeks the Browns come out of it 0-3, then yeah, they're going to probably start stripping parts down. If they come out of the next 3 weeks 1-2, we're talking about a team that is then, 2-5, right? 1-3, 2-5. If they come out of the next 3 weeks 2-1 or 3-0, then no way they're trading Cooper at that point. But I think they're going to let the next 3 weeks play out. I don't think the Chiefs either are going to be rushing to make a deal. they probably want to see if they can get anything going from, they're probably running out of patience with, but guys like Sky Moore and other players on their roster. They want to look internally first for replacements. And after 2 weeks that they discover, all right, the replacement for Rashee Rice is not on this roster, then you start looking external. So I don't think the Browns or the Chiefs are going to be heating up trade talks over the next 2 weeks. Like, I think they're going to give both sides a little bit longer. Browns want to see if they can put something together here and rattle off a couple of wins. Chiefs don't want to just rush to just give away assets, give away currency to a GM before even giving their own guys a shot. So, with that all being said, if a trade were to happen, I think this is a rough idea for what it could look like. I tossed and turned about Kansas City giving up a third. I don't think they would. Now, it is important to note that when the Browns restructured Amari Cooper's contract, they brought his base salary down to essentially a minimum of about $1.6 million. When you make a trade for a player, you are only taking on the remaining base salary. Now, you take a player's base salary and you divide it by 17 for 17 game checks. So whenever the Chiefs trade, if they trade whatever for Amari Cooper, if 5, 6, 7 weeks have already gone by, they only have to pick up the remaining tab on that base salary for the checks that have not been cashed and paid out yet. So it's not going to cost Kansas City or any other team for that matter very much at all. It'll cost them nearly nothing from a financial standpoint. So when it comes to, do they have cap space? Yes, everyone has cap space to trade for Amari Cooper. He will cost you pennies compared to other players. But would you do this trade? 4th and a 6th. I think that's probably what you can expect to get for Cooper. One, he has not looked so good this year that I feel like other teams would be dying to get him. Now, I have no doubt that if this trade were to happen, he would instantaneously figure it out with Patrick Mahomes and start to look like a god, because that just seems to be the Cleveland Browns' luck. But I don't think the Chiefs are going to be willing to give up much more than a 4th and probably toss in an extra day 3 draft pick. Might not be what you want to hear, but you're not getting a 1st. You're not getting a 2nd. You might get a 3rd, but chances are if you get a 3rd, you probably have to send a draft pick back to Kansas City, like a 5th or a 6th or something. So let me know what you think about trading Cooper. I always love to hear your guys' thoughts in the comment section below. Before we get on out of here, quick shout out to the Brown and Orange Club. Tim Green, Mike Dibble, Jeremy Stallman, Slow But Sure, David Botner, Jared Brandt, James Harper, Papa T, Joseph Deporte, Mike, Ray Bidding, Dr. No, Eli Green, John Porter, Scorpion, Max T. Thank you guys so much for supporting us here. If you want to get shout-outs for the entire 2024 season, $50 super chat. We add your name to the club, and we'll give you shout-outs all year long. That's going to do it for us on today's episode. Thank you so much for tuning in. If you enjoyed our content, make sure to like the video and subscribe, and I'll see you all next time. What's going on, Ricky? Good to see you. If we're talking about trading Cooper, we're done this year. Yep. And I don't think Andrew Berry is going to get to that stage after 1-3. I don't think he's willing to accept that. And I don't really want him to accept that. Sure, hindsight's always great, and if we know how the next 4 weeks go, then yeah, if you could trade Cooper now with his value higher than if he were to play poorly over the next 4 weeks, then he looked like a genius. But you don't know that, and I like to have a GM that doesn't want to quit on a team in September, especially a team that at least has one win, right? If the Browns were 0-4, we could have a different conversation. But 1-3, I feel like I'm still holding on to a thread. And I feel like this is a talented enough team to climb up from that thread and turn it into a rope, as I go down a Colin Cowherd analogy, turn that rope into a vine, into a branch, and then we're standing back on our feet. And if this team can get to 3-3, they're very much alive. Let me know what you think, though. Trade Cooper or not? Yes or no? Cameron Minch, Greg Newsome needs to step it up. Pretty much everyone in the cornerback room other than Denzel Ward needs to step up. That pretty much sums up, I feel like, the Browns' DBs. Like Delpit's been good. He hasn't been a playmaker. We haven't seen Juan Thornhill since week 1, and it's been mostly Ronnie Hickman filling in. I think Hickman's done a solid job, but I would like to see more from Newsome and Emerson. Those two kind of just disappearing for the first 4 weeks, was not on my bingo card. And I can't really make sense of it still, especially Emerson. I'm hoping it's just a funk, and this 1-3 will be a big splash of water to the face, and they're going to start to kick some ass and take some names on Sunday in D.C. If not, we can really start to pack it up. It's got to come together this week. Has to. I said that last week, but this week I really mean it. Like, if it doesn't come together this week, it's just not going to. 1-4 in the AFC, I think. I say that, but like 1-4 is too tough of a hole to climb out of. The AFC this year is kind of rocky. Like the Bengals are 1-3. The Ravens are 2-2. The Jets are 2-2. The Dolphins aren't very good. The Bills are 3-1, so we kind of pencil in the Bills to be your AFC East champ. In the AFC West, you've got the Chiefs, who are one of the worst, like 4-0 teams in recent memory, but they're the Chiefs, so whatever. Broncos are 2-2. Raiders are 2-2. And the Chargers are 2-2. So everyone's really still within close range of one another. So even at 1-3, thankfully with the rest of the AFC not shaping up to be that strong so far, they're somewhat still in it, believe it or not. In the AFC South, like the Jags are 0-4, the Titans stink, they're 0-3, and the Colts are 2-2, but I still don't really believe in the Colts.
And Anthony Richardson is hurt.
Richardson's hurt, and the Texans, I'm not all that impressed by them. The Browns don't play them, but like I think the Texans are vulnerable. I think they are more vulnerable than people are realizing. That was a team that won 9 games last year. And give them credit, they made the most of that when they got to the playoffs, but they needed a bad division to get into the playoffs.
They should be way ahead of that division right now.
Yes.
They should be dominating that division because 3 out of the 4 teams are terrible.
Stripped it. Why do you see Emerson shadowing opponents' wide receiver ones instead of Ward? Stripped it. That's a great question. Use hashtag Browns because I have a great answer for you, but I want to save it for the mailbag. And in order to get that question on screen for our mailbag, use hashtag Browns. I'm not doing it to like plug something for the algorithm. It's just our software finds hashtag Browns and pulls it, and then we can put it on screen. Cameron, you're not getting a first rounder for Amari Cooper. Okay. Are we ready to jump into a mailbag? There it is, stripped it right on cue. I'd love to answer that question, but I just can't answer it if we don't get hashtag Browns. Okay, we got a handful of questions coming in here. So if you think of something and you want to skip the line and guarantee your question gets on screen, super chat like Joshua Miller did, and we'll include that question in our mailbag. Otherwise, producer Reed just picks his favorite questions, hashtag Browns out of the chat. So with 200 people tuned in, 95 likes, we can get 5 more likes, get ourselves to 100 likes, and then we can get this mailbag off and running and get you guys on your way with the rest of your Monday, as we have 2 games to watch tonight. Doubleheader. I will be missing most of the first game. I don't quite understand it, but I have engagement pictures to do tonight. What I don't understand is I hired a photographer when the proposal happened, Reed, and we got a lot of pictures then, and I thought those would be sufficient for these pictures. Evidently not. We have to redo the whole thing. Not fake the proposal, but more pictures. So I'm not quite sure what's wrong with the first pictures we got back in May, but that's what I get to do tonight. So yippee me. I originally scheduled it for Friday, no football, and the photographer said no bueno, canceled on us last minute and rescheduled to Monday. So here we are now. That's gonna suck, but okay, we're gonna power through. I also was told I had to have all these clothes ready to wear, and last night I decided to start getting those clothes out, and I discovered 2 of them were in my dry cleaning bag, so that was not good. That was a tough conversation, but anywho, let's get into it. Are we ready to start this mailbag read? I see Jimmy's got a question. I know Striptip put one in there. I saw a lot of questions earlier. Yeah. Hashtag. Okay, Reed said he lost some of the questions from earlier. So if you asked a question at the beginning of the show, toss it back in, hashtag Browns.
Yeah, the software, sometimes it'll freeze, so I have to refresh it. And then whenever I refresh it, some of them don't stick. We're planning on something new. It's just not ready yet.
Yeah, we've had some technical issues the whole season so far. So kind of band-aiding it. But if you had a question that you put in very early in the live stream, I highly recommend you put it back in right now. That way we can find it, grab it, and put it on screen. I saw Manuel, appreciate you already correcting the mistake. So if you put a question in earlier, please resubmit it. That way our producer Reed can find it and put it on screen for you. Okay, here we go. Let's jump into a live Cleveland Browns mailbag. As soon as Reed is ready to roll, 103 likes. Appreciate you guys for hitting that thumbs up button. And like I said, if a question comes to your mind at the last second and you just want to guarantee it gets on screen, super chat, and we'll throw it on for everyone watching to see. All right, here we go. Let's jump into a live Cleveland Browns mailbag. What's going on, everyone? Welcome on into a mailbag edition of the Cleveland Browns Report. I'm answering questions that came in during our live show, which airs every Monday at 5 p.m. Eastern. So come hang out with us next Monday if you have a question you would like to ask. Our first question coming in via Super Chat from Joshua Miller, and it's more of just a sentiment, an opinion than a question, but it's something that I think a lot of people are feeling right now. And the nuts and bolts of it is Deshaun Watson is a $230 million quarterback that should be able to overcome some of these issues. And I get that feeling, right? But I think it's important to understand, depositing $230 million into his bank account does not make Amari Cooper catch every single pass. Doesn't make DeJuan Jones pick up every single blitz. Doesn't make Andy Dickerson coach this offensive line to pick up stunts better. There are things that, sure, you'd like to see Watson be a superhero over and, rise above these issues. But there are some things where it's $1 billion or not, he can't force the receivers to catch the football. I get the feeling, and at times I too feel the same way. But there are one too many instances of it's not just one drop by Cooper that allows me to say this to cover it all up. Yeah, there are moments where Watson definitely needs to be and should be better, but there are far too many examples of everyone else around him is somewhat failing him. And I just keep replaying that one scene in the movie The Longest Yard where the offensive line lets Paul Crewe just get smashed, and then they let him get smashed again. And he's like, all right, are we done with that? It feels like that's happening right now. But it's clearly not at that level. This is not a Hollywood movie, and I sure hope they're not intentionally failing Watson, ruining their next contract in the NFL. Peter Griffin, what's going on? Would you trade Amari Cooper for Kyle Pitts? Two guys that have been discussed in early trade rumors. Quick reminder, the NFL trade deadline is November 5th, so we still are a ways to go. I don't expect to see much movement from any team between now and October 30th. Most of the trades happen following that NFL Sunday before that Tuesday, which I think is a pretty big Tuesday in this country. I don't know why. And that's going to be the window where you see 90% of the trades go down. So when it actually comes to Cooper for Pitts, as you asked, Mr. Griffin, I don't think that improves the Browns. Neither player has lived up to expectations early on this season. I don't think trading trash for another team's trash, and I don't want to call these players trash, but just the trash production, you know what I mean, is going to improve the Browns. So I would probably pass on this. Do the Browns want to recreate their offensive identity? Do they want to go to a two tight end set more? That's what Stefanski did early on. They brought in Dorsey to kind of get away from that. Are they deciding, no, let's get back to that? Let's get to more two tight end personnel groupings? If so, then okay, I can understand acquiring Pitts for that reason, but I would say no to this. It's a fun idea, but it's probably an idea that's going to die on some Bleacher Report article over the next few weeks. All right, we got some other questions coming in here on today's mailbag. Running into some software issues. Okay, don't worry, we can edit all this out afterwards, but. All right, hold up. Wait a minute. I wasn't joking earlier when I said the software was not behaving. I believe you. Okay. In the meantime, I'll just kind of go through the chat here and read out loud what some of you guys are saying. Tim Green, it's a new season with new coaches plus missing multiple draft picks over 3 years. It's starting to show. Thanks, Jimmy. I definitely agree, Tim, that like the lack of draft capital has caught up to the Browns. And when we talk about Andrew Berry as a drafter, his best picks are not recent picks. And that's really starting to show. I would say his best pick was Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah in round 2. His next best pick was probably Martin Emerson in round 3, if you kind of factor in the value. But the last, you're getting basically nothing from this rookie class. Zach Zinter's starting at right guard, so you're getting a body out there. I'm not really sure, just after one start how great he's been. Too early to say, but he's the only one from the 2024 draft class contributing. 2023 draft class, Cedric Tillman hasn't produced much for you at all. I mean, you're not really getting a whole lot right now from DeJuan Jones, so you kind of got 2 straight draft classes with very little production on the field. You got to go back to 2022 to find Martin Emerson, right? No Perrion Winfrey, no Cade York. That's a draft class that doesn't have a whole lot to write home about. And you got to go back further to find JOK. So, yeah, you're just not getting a whole lot out of recent draft classes, which that's okay if your veterans play well. The veterans are not playing well enough. Okay. Cowboys reports in the house. Amari for a 5th. Who says no? I know who doesn't say no, Tom. Andrew Berry doesn't, since that was the offer the Dallas Cowboys accepted for Amari Cooper, which, hot take, worst trade. Cooper to the Browns or Watson? Everyone loves. If we're being real, by the way, I think it's I wouldn't say low-hanging fruit, but medium-hanging fruit when people talk about the Watson trade and contract being the worst. They very quickly gloss over Russell Wilson, which involved 2 firsts and 2 seconds and was moved on from quicker than Deshaun Watson. I'm not quite sure why that one just doesn't really enter the mix enough. Other bad contracts, because those 2 trades have been some of the biggest trade packages for a player. Usually you see that package go for a 3rd or 1st or 2nd round draft pick. But speaking of draft, Bryce Young, that Panthers trade, that to me has to be the worst trade in NFL history. What they gave up, and they got 17, 18 games out of Bryce Young before benching him. I don't know how that's not the worst trade in NFL history. Straight up. DJ Moore, 1st overall picks. That to me is a slam dunk candidate for the worst trade in NFL history. Contract, I feel like you can't rule on a contract if the player's still on the team and still has opportunities to show themselves. So, bad choice of words for Watson. It still has opportunities to prove themselves. But with Wilson, he's not on the team anymore. We can grade that contract, and that was an awful contract. If Watson plays well for the second half of his contract, it's not going to be the worst contract in NFL history. I would say right now, the Trevor Lawrence one's looking shaky. So, Lawrence's deal, I'm concerned about. If you're a Jags fan, how we coming roughly? Okay, you guys can see how the sausage is made. I would just suggest taking these questions and making the graphics. Yeah. So just take 5 or 6 and just plug them in there. You know what I mean? So take 3 minutes. Cardinals rally. I'll just read the super chat out loud. Reed's doing a lot of work behind the scenes here. No, that's okay. Just get the questions. Is Chubb returning this week? Yes and no. By returning, do you mean practice? If so, then the answer is yes. If you mean playing on Sunday, the answer is TBD. I would lean towards no. I think they're going to want to give Chubb more than just 1 week of practice before tossing him on the field, right? I think they're going to want to give him a week of practice and then give him that Sunday a little bit more time to recover and whatnot. And then after a second week of practice, you got 6 padded practices under your belt. Now you're ready to go out and play a full-speed NFL game. Who remembers, like, Watson when he came back after sitting out for a whole season and then 2/3 of the next season, how rusty he was against the Texans in Houston. Like, Nick Chubb has been out for a long time. It's been over a year. He has missed, 20 games? Like, he's going to need, I think, more than just 3 days of practice. And also, like you say, that's what I thought too, especially with this line. Yeah, I would agree with that, Hall. I would agree with that. Speaking of Hall, Ryan, Michael Hall Jr. news. He pleaded no contest, and he got fined, and it appears that the legal side of it is all done. So now we're waiting for the NFL to either remove him from the commissioner's list or give him a suspension so that there's a date that he can return at. I'm not quite sure what's the holdup now that the legal side is done. I don't know if the NFL is just intentionally dragging their feet to suspend him, even longer because it doesn't really go down as a suspension. He's just on the commissioner's list, so he can't practice, he can't play. I don't think the Browns are desperately awaiting his return for on-the-field performance. Even when Hall does come back to the team, I don't think there's going to be a spot for him on the defensive line rotation. Like, it's Dalvin Tomlinson, Shelby Harris, Quentin Jefferson. Mo Hurst is on IR, so I guess that would be... By the time Mo Hurst comes back, we'll probably see Mike Hall start to return, and it'll probably be Hurst back on the field then, too. All right, we're going to get all these questions. I'm really sorry again. Our software just not behaving with us today, and we'll jump right back into our mailbag. So appreciate everyone's patience with us here. We've just had some technical issues the last couple of weeks. Cameron, we need some blockers on defense. We need some physicality on defense. We need some guys who want to tackle on defense. That's for starters. Like, the Browns' defense does not look like a Jim Schwartz defense when it comes to violence and physicality. That's what football is. This is not a contact sport. It is a collision sport. Can we get some more collisions? Like, I'm not asking for a CTE montage, but we need some guys who want to hit some people. And I can count on one hand who I think those people are. JOK, Myles Garrett, Denzel Ward. Those are the 3 guys that come to mind right now that have made some big effing plays so far. Should the Browns draft Shedeur Sanders or offensive line? I think if Watson continues to play at a similar level, but he's improved, so he's improved from week 1 to week 4. Do we all agree? So let's say that he continues to improve at a similar rate. Not saying he's going to end week 18 with 700 yards, but if he continues to kind of go on this trajectory he's on, I think the plan is for him to come back as the starter next year. Why wouldn't it be? He's under contract for 2 more years. It's not like this season has to be the make or break year for Watson as a Brown. I don't see until told otherwise why he wouldn't be their starting quarterback for the remainder of his contract. And I don't think the Browns are going to look to try and draft his replacement if the replacement's going to suffer from the same things that are plaguing Watson right now. An aging offensive line that's not playing well. I think the Browns' first-round draft pick is going to be a new tackle. That's got to be the building block for correcting the offensive line. New tackle, probably replacing either Teller or Bretonio. You got Zinter, who I hope going into at that point in year 2 will be ready to take on a starting job from day 1. So if we're talking about the future offensive line for Cleveland, I think it's a rookie starting at left tackle, probably Bretonio at left guard, Posick at center, Zinter at right guard, and then tackle either a free agent signing or honestly, it could be one of four things. Like Jack Conklin's under contract. Why wouldn't he kind of go back to starting there? Could DeJuan Jones get back into form? Do they go sign a cheap free agent? Do they draft 2 rookie tackles? Start 2 rookie tackles? Probably not. That seems like you're biting off more than you can chew. But I think the Browns is they're out of words for this mailbag. Ghostface, then get out of the world. This is mail. Oh, who's upset? World Factor, I am very sorry. We are dealing with technical issues. Our software is not pulling the questions from the chat, which you use for our mailbag. So Reed is having to do it manually. The best comparison I can make is, I feel like this is like when Microsoft Excel got invented. Like that's what we're doing right now, pre-Excel. Wow, world's fastest human is really riled up right now. I have a question. Would you rather have Prime Odell right now or Cooper? Prime Odell. Yeah. Guy was unbelievable his first 4 years. Ninja, Petonio's our only starting lineman left. His resilience has been phenomenal. Yes, he hasn't looked like the all-pro, Pro Bowl guard that he was from that like 2018 to 2023, 2022-ish stretch. But I'm still happy to have him, and he's got a seat at this table until he decides to walk away. He's been on the team for a decade. He's the longest tenured Brown. I'm not quite sure if he's a Hall of Famer, but you'd be surprised when you look at his resume how good it is. Okay, are we ready to jump into our mailbag for World's Fastest Fat Man?
Yes.
Okay.
I'm so sorry.
Okay, here we go. We're going to run through some of the questions. I'm really sorry again about the delay, but we are ready to roll now. So without further ado, we're going to pick up where we left off with hopefully no more technical issues. Jimmy Hintz, next one up on the show. Stefanski on the hot seat. No, Stefanski received a contract extension before the season began. Anyone that says Stefanski's on the hot seat, I think is just trying to scrape together a couple of names for their head coaching hot seat article. Excellent gamer. Would you be interested in drafting a wide receiver like Isaiah Bond, QB Cam Ward possibly to sit for a year and watch Watson play? Unless the Browns finish with such a great draft pick, like top 5, I don't think they're going to be reaching for a quarterback. I think Watson is playing at a level right now where we can expect him to gradually improve as he tends to do throughout the year historically. And let's not forget, the guy's under contract for 2 more years beyond this. So I have full belief that Deshaun Watson will be this team's starting quarterback week 1 of 2025. So I think that first-round draft pick is going to be going to supporting Watson, a new left tackle, a new offensive lineman. If I had to bet right now, the Browns' first-round draft pick in 2025 is an offensive lineman. Time Lord, the defense run stopping. I'm not quite sure, Time Lord, exactly what you mean here, but the run defense was, if this was you're hinting at, atrocious in week 3 against the Raiders, or week 4 against the Raiders. They let the Las Vegas Raiders triple what they averaged through the first 3 weeks of the year. So there are going to be some heads that roll in the film room after that pathetic run-stopping performance against Las Vegas. All right, we have some more questions to get to here on the show, and then we're going to tell everyone watching about our great sponsor, Game Time. So, next question coming in from Stripped It. Why do we see Emerson shadowing opponents' wide receivers ones instead of Ward? Why do we see Emerson shadowing opponents' wide receiver ones instead of Ward? This question was asked to Jim Schwartz after the Malik Neighbors just dominance against the Browns, and he gave a very intelligent answer, which is if you have your number 1 corner, Denzel Ward, shadow a team's number 1 wide receiver like Malik Neighbors, you are tipping your hand pre-snap that you are in a man defense, right? Whereas if you keep your left and right corners where they don't switch sides of the field, the opposing team does not know if it is a man defense or a zone defense. The NFL has played at such a high level where games and plays are won on the tiniest of margins. And every single advantage for either the offense or defense could be crucial. And such an advantage like knowing if they are in man because Denzel Ward follows that guy around tips your hand a little bit, and that could be just enough for an offensive coordinator to go, I've got the greatest man beater play out there, or a great zone beating play, and we're going to abuse that since the Browns keep tipping their hand. There are pros and cons, of course, to that, though, because if you let Denzel Ward sit on the other side of the field from Malik Neighbors and Martin Emerson gets cooked time and time again, I don't know what battle you're winning if you don't tell them, yeah, we're not a man or zone, but we're going to let you have a touchdown anyway, but you didn't know if we were a man or zone. So what battle are you really winning if you're losing that badly in your initial game plan? So before we get on to the rest of the questions on today's mailbag, today's show was made possible thanks to our friends over at Game Time. Game Time has a new feature called Game Time Picks that makes getting tickets to see your favorite teams play live even easier. Game Time Picks filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. One thing I really like about Game Time is their all-in pricing option. Toggling this feature shows the total upfront cost with no surprise fees at checkout. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code CHATSPORTS for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code CHAT SPORTS for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game Time. Next question coming in via Super Chat from Cardinals Rally. Is Chubb returning this week? He is returning to practice. That does not mean he is a guarantee to play on Sunday against the Commanders. The Browns are opening his practice window, which essentially means he can practice for the next 21 days. After those 21 days are up, the Browns have to make a decision. Place him on the active 53-man roster or put him back on the reserve PUP list, and his 2024 season is done. So, is Chubb returning this week? He is returning to practice. Does not mean he is a guarantee or anywhere near that to play on Sunday against the Commanders. My suspicion is he will practice this week and next week, and then he will play against Philly in, week 6. Cardinals Rally, appreciate your super chat. Kathy, next one up on the show. Do you think we should fire the offensive line coach and defensive line coach? Andy Dickerson and Jaquez Cesar, right, I think I pronounced his last name close enough. Definitely somewhat on my shit list, pardon my French, but starting with Andy Dickerson. The Browns are not executing fundamentals on the offensive line. They're not picking up blitzes. They're not picking up stunts. They are not having the correct assignments. Those are somewhat day one things. So I don't think anyone's going to get fired midseason. I think the Browns are going to have a little bit of patience, and they're going to give these coaches time to solve the issues and figure it out. We're not going to see them panic too much after just 4 weeks of the season. I mean, the Browns' offensive line, believe it or not, at least from a number standpoint, it has improved from week 1 to week 4. Week 1 against the Cowboys, they gave up 25 pressures. Week 4, they gave up just 3, according to Pro Football Reference. So, well, not great improvements. There are improvements being made. Defensive line coach, again, reevaluate at the end of the season. I don't think either guy's getting fired midseason. But who you got, by the way, for this Sunday? Browns or Commanders? We have a few more questions, Reed, or the last one? So, before we get on out of here, Browns or Commanders, let me know in the comment section below. I can't believe I'm going to say this. Commanders have won 3 in a row. But I'm taking the Brownies, baby. They're hungry. They should have been hungry last week, but they got to be starving this week. So, give me the Brownies over the Commanders to keep their season on the line. I smell a Dustin Hopkins walk-off winner. And it's not a pretty game, but a win. And we all go, we have a pulse. We have life. All right, that's going to do it for us on today's mailbag. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. If you have not subscribed to the channel yet, I invite you to go ahead and do so. That way you do not miss a single thing when it comes to your favorite Cleveland Browns. All right, boys and girls. I appreciate everyone's patience. I'm sorry if you had a question that we didn't get to. Like we said, we have a software that pulls the questions, and then it just stopped working. Plain and simple.
There's nothing I can really do about it. I'm sorry, guys.
So
I was trying my best to work around it, but
we'll hopefully get everything squared away for next week. I do have to run, so I'm sorry to cut this party short. But thank you guys so much for hanging out with us. Enjoy the rest of your Monday. Enjoy Monday Night Football, and we'll talk tomorrow.